In today's episode, I will be answering a question or a problem that was on the Discord, which is creating custom tooltips. So here is a quick example of what we will be doing in this episode. We have an item here, which is slotted here, and we can check its properties by having the mouse hovering it. So you can see that we have different crystals in there with different values. And yeah, we'll basically see how we can create a tooltip. So here it is something quite simple, which can be achieved with a simple label, I believe, pretty much. But what we want is to have a header, those separators, and actually valuable properties. Let's quickly look at the plan for this episode. So first, we will be adding a few properties to our crystal resource so that we do have those red, green, and blue properties that we did notice. And we will create a custom scene for the tooltip, and then we will implement it as the tooltip. Here is a, I don't know, quick reminder or thing that you can come back to if you do want to make tooltips. Like, it's definitely not the best, but basically you want to create a node to return, which is going to be the custom scene you'll be using. You want to get the information to display in that node from somewhere, so you're gonna make sure that you get this information. You want to instantiate this node and set its properties to match whatever you're watching based on the information that you got here in step 2. And finally, you will return this node in this make custom tooltip method, which will be handling the entire tooltip system here. So let's take the project where it was in the previous episode. And yeah, I have lost all my tabs, but that's fine. We first want to visualize this third scene, so let's see that, and we have the inventory here. Inventory with the crystals popping, and what we want to do is probably edit this. Yeah, so here's our crystal at the moment. We have this big expand thing and our cell crystal bottom. So I'm gonna remove this information tab here, and I will also remove these labels being updated here. Update properties labels. So this I will leave it, but I will not call it like this. Update property label. All right, so we're gonna ignore those things we did earlier. Instead, I will add a node. So let's see what's the actual vertical box. We don't need to stretch, right? Can be just left. Is that fine? Is there an anchor? Yes, we'll have it centered. So before the cell button, we want on the left a texture rectangle. So we gotta set this above it so that it's on the left. And we can now set a texture. So I will bring in a texture because I don't have it here. Okay, so I have my texture and I can bring it to my texture rectangle. I'm gonna ignore the size of the texture and set it manually to be 80/80. Okay, because it is the height of the button and that's what I want to reach. Okay. Keep scale, keep centered, aspect centered. Yeah, something like this. Yeah, let's have aspect centered. Okay. So here we have the texture that will be holding the tooltip display, if I dare say that. And I will make it unique because that could be useful later. Okay, so I wanted to add a few properties to our crystals there. So I want to have my crystal resource somewhere. Crystal.gd probably. So we have the value, the name, and I will create new properties, red, green, and blue. So these are just random properties at the moment, green and blue. So you can choose to initialize those, it's really up to you. But anyway, what I will be doing is set a variable random properties to those variables based on the crystal creation here. So I'm gonna have new crystal.red. It's gonna be a random integer from 0 to, let's go with 25. I'm just gonna copy this to make it on all colors. So green and blue. If you're wondering why I'm not using underscores here, I mean, it is because actually in the first place, I shouldn't have used underscores on value and name, but I did as a mistake. It's okay, it's something we can definitely manage. And instead of refactoring the entire episode and make it different from the version you have, that's still here. And yeah, new variable not having those. So anyway, I'm gonna copy this thing in there to add it to the rare crystal as well. And instead here, we're gonna go from 0 to, let's go 250. I don't know. That's a rare one. So the result of that is that our crystal here has a few properties that we can now display. The next thing I want to do is to create a scene, a custom scene, that will be our tooltip here. So I will create a margin container, okay, and that will be crystal tooltip. Okay, so I don't need it to take the entire screen, obviously, that's going to be centered, and I'm going to have, yeah, as usual, 16 margin. That seems good. And all I want to do is to stack a few information on top of each other. So this we do achieve by using a VBox container and adding items in there. So first we have a label that will say crystal name. Since it is the header, I will change the theme variation to header small. I will have a separator. Okay, I'm gonna name this crystal name. Cool. I'm gonna add another label, which is the label, which is the value. Okay, so here we're gonna have value, and new separator. Okay, and a few more labels, which are gonna be red, green, and blue. So here we're gonna have red value. I'm gonna duplicate it. So this one's green value, and this one is blue value. Okay, so red, semicolon value. Same thing here, green, semicolon value, and same thing for the blue guy. Right. So this is going to be our custom tooltip that we will be using. Oh, it's just a label, stack of label at the moment. So we need to set it so that we can give information to that label so that it uses that information to display whatever we want to display in our labels here. So we need to create a script as usual. And first I will save the scene and then create a script. So here we have crystal tooltip. Cool. And there we go, creating that script. So class name, crystal tooltip, right? There we want to have a place to store our crystal. So here we'll just store the crystal resource that we do want to show in the tooltip. So that's gonna be here. I think we have done that already. We're gonna create a public entry point, which is set resource or set crystal. which will allow us to send a crystal resource as an argument to a function, and that will do all the things we are supposed to do when we update the resource. So crystal, local crystal, is going to be equal to argument crystal. And then what we will do is to update the labels in a private function this time. So let's have a few labels unique, okay, so that we can call on those. So here, let's start with the crystal name as a label. What we want to do is change the text to be equal to just the crystal name. I actually want to remind you once again, this node will be instanced in the script, and it will be added to the scene tree in a script. And the onReady variable that we use at the top of the script, this only triggers when the node is in the tree. The set crystal I usually call before it is in the tree. So because of that, I have to manually fetch the labels, the nodes with their path or their names, because we can't set references at that point. We actually can do it in this method here, but since we will only call them once, there we go. So here is the entire update label method that we can safely call from the setCrystal method. Okay, so this is going to be our tooltip that we'll be using. We can now leave the script after I do add a little bit of documentation for you. So there you can see the documentation, and we move on. Moving on to our inventory slot scene. So here, the inventory slot has, I believe, a resource or a crystal. Yeah, we have a resource here. So what we can do is basically use that resource, which is the step 2 of making the tooltip, to feed the tooltip from the texture rectangle here. So we need to find a way to have this information go toward the texture rectangle. The texture rectangle specifically because when we will use the make custom tooltip method, it has to be attached to the node or the game object here, our image, that will be responsible for displaying that tooltip. So I'm gonna create a script. How will I name this? That's going to be the texture, crystal texture. I will do that, crystal texture, and rename it crystal texture. So I think I will name this class like this, so that we can use this class name later on. But anyway, we'll create a variable crystal resource, exactly like we did in the scene. And we will set an entry point, again, set crystal, that will take a crystal as an argument that we will be able to send. Here we just want, again, the local crystal to be equal to the argument crystal. We're gonna leave this like this at the moment. We can now go to our inventory slot script and think about what will happen when we actually set the resource right there. When we set the resource, we have the local resource here being updated, and what we can do is have the crystal texture as a crystal texture, set crystal method to be called, invoked, so that we can send in there the resource, the local resource. So now our texture is aware of the crystal to display. Now, one thing is sure. Our little texture here has access to the crystal to display, so we can use the make custom tooltip method here. So it is a very specific method, okay? We can go in there, read the description, see the examples, but I think that this example here is actually a very good one. You create a node by instantiating a scene that you have loaded, you set whatever you want in it, and you return it. That's the entire concept. Okay, so here we will do that. I will just create a variable for our scene. So here we'll have the scene as a packed scene equal to preloading, and we will choose the tooltip. Is it not saved yet? Tooltip, yes, crystal tooltip, and pick the TSCN. That's important. Okay, we have our scene. Now, we're gonna create the node as a crystal tooltip because it is our scene instantiated, and it is a crystal tooltip. Okay. Now this node, we can use the setCrystal method, same as here, and we send the crystal in there. Okay. Last, we do return the node as the tooltip. We are not using the full text here, so we will underscore this argument that we do not use. There we go. So now, yes, now I really want you to, it's funny because I intentionally did what I did here because I wanted to see it. I thought about it like 1 minute ago and I forgot about it. But anyway, if we do create a crystal, hover over it, nothing happens. There's a reason for that. The reason is that our crystal texture here doesn't have a text value for the tooltip. If I just put a dot here and run the game again, we create a crystal and we do have a tooltip showing in there. In an earlier episode, we have created excavation method here. If we do visualize those crystals, they are properly named common crystals and have their values. You may understand the reason why. Simply, this create crystal button, it's using an old method that we haven't updated. So maybe we can update that very quickly. In our game, we have this third scene, which we can inspect and see that this button here has no script. So the script is probably the big one. In the big one, we have on button pressed with create crystal, which we can go fetch. And here we have this crystal resource is just the basic constructor. So we can go with two ways here. We can either, nah, I'm just gonna change that and say that we want to create a common crystal. Because I don't think that we actually can change the constructor. No, we probably can't. Or that would be like trying to redo that. I don't know. That's a little bit weird. But it could work. Like just reworking the constructor to make sure that it creates a common crystal by default. Maybe. Back to the little tooltip here. That's hard to say. There it is fine now when we debug create crystals. Okay. You may be wondering why I actually prompted you to add a dot in this text here. It is because of how Godot works, basically. By default, Godot does display tooltips on any control node, because we are in control here, that has a tooltip. When we make a custom one, the same rule applies. If there is no text in a tooltip box here or property, Godot will ignore the creation of a tooltip in order not to create an empty box with no text in it, right? Don't make sense. So there we go. That's why you actually have to put anything you want in there. The thing is that if you actually go in the script, you will notice that this argument here is actually the text from there. So you can actually get that text and use it for whatever reason. If for some reasons it is set in another method, then yep. So there it is. This is all we will be doing for this tooltip in this episode. I hope that was interesting as usual, and if you did like it, that's cool. And I will see you in another episode. And just mentioning that right now it's a little bit late, but anyway, there's a green video that popped in the timeline. I want to say that the white videos and the green videos, they aren't notified to subscribers. So by default, when they are added to the playlist and become public on the channel, they won't show in your subscribing feed, but they could show on your home page of YouTube if it thinks it makes sense for you to be notified. Yeah. So anyway, a green video popped, which is just a re-upload of the live we made yesterday, the last Saturday night, because I think I will be doing lives again. And yeah, you can see on this slides and actually the beginning of this episode that we did work a little bit on the project and did a few things. Yeah, if you want to catch that, make sure you actually either join the Discord or try to catch the lives on the channel, because at the moment I don't have a schedule, so they are pretty random. I'm maybe thinking about doing a schedule, I don't know. But anyway, I have chosen at the moment to, well, decided to keep 2 different timelines for the project, which we can now visualize here by saving this episode here. That's going to be Tooltips. And there we go, we now have 2 timelines for this project. Here we have the streaming timeline and the video timeline. So I don't know if those 2 will merge one of these days. Could be, could be. So anyway, that's it for me. A little bit tired here, and I will see you in the next video.